Last month, Atlus finally did what we initially thought was unthinkable. They released Persona 3 and 4 for every modern system. This news initially brought us as a community closer, as not only were we able to experience our favorite titles again on whichever system we pleased, but we were also finally able to share our love for the series with others who were unable to access the titles previously. However, as time progressed, horror would come to light, and we would all soon come to realize that there was one crucial thing about these ports that was missing: the lack of a physical release. Upon hearing this news, we became somewhat disheartened at Atlus's lack of regard for just how crucial these titles are to the JRPG genre, and we all asked the same question: why? Well, faithful viewer, I am here today to go through the theories as to why a physical copy of these titles simply do not exist. And speaking of not existing, sometimes I just feel like my channel just doesn't exist, for no particular reason at all. So to help it exist, and put all of my hard work on the map, why don't you go ahead and like the video, comment letting me know what you think about the whole no physical copies situation, and subscribe for more Persona, Mega 10 and JRPG content in the future. Alright, got the sellout part of the video out of the way, now we can dive right into why there are no physical versions of these ports. To start to understand why there isn't a physical release, it's imperative that we travel back in time slightly to the year 2020, where in June of that year, Persona 4 Golden finally broke free from its PS Vita prison. Launching on Steam for all PC users, Persona 4 was finally given the light that many thought it deserved, and after the success of Persona 5, people didn't waste a second making the decision to purchase this title. The sales of the game skyrocketed beyond initial expectations for Atlus, and the release of this port became a critical success for the company, all the while not having a physical release. Now, the reason why this port doesn't have a physical version is quite simple. It's a PC game that launched on Steam, and we all know in the current year, physical PC games aren't really sought out by consumers anymore. It's much more convenient to have a digital library with Steam and the various other game distributing platforms there are. Not needing to make a physical version of the port would actually be beneficial to Atlus, as they could use this data to determine that they actually didn't need to spend time, energy, and money releasing a physical version of the game in order to rake those dollars back home to Japan. This lesson would most likely go on to be used when the port of Persona 4 Arena Ultimax released for all platforms during the 25th Persona anniversary in order to simply maximize profit. But it's not like Atlus really needed to make money, right? You'd like to think that, especially seeing as though Shin Megami Tensei 5 did reasonably well. But there are two problem children from Atlus that recently didn't quite live up to their parents' hopes and dreams. The first one is Atlus's latest new title, Soul Hackers 2, which struggled overall even though its Japanese sales were strong. Sega revealed in their November 2022 quarterly fiscal report that the game was struggling to meet sales expectations, and this is most likely due to average sales and reception in the West. This isn't the first time in the past few years this has happened to the company over its main overall franchise, Mega 10, as in 2021, Atlus also released a game which met a similar fate, except this one was a port. The Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster, which is actually just a port of the title, while it didn't do as poorly as Soul Hackers 2 thanks to its critical acclaim of yesteryears, didn't do quite as well in the West as they were hoping it to. Unlike Persona 4 Golden or Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, these two titles released physically, which only would have increased costs, as not only did they have to manufacture the games, they had to export them globally in order to appease the global fanbase. And with these costs factored in with the development time for some of the more recent Atlus titles, this would only hurt the game studio's capability to produce titles in the future due to financial issues. While Atlus does have Sega to help them in case of crisis, it's clear that companies generally want to run a profit. Thus, because of the major cost of physically releasing these titles globally and the success of Persona 4 Golden, which was a digital-only release, Atlus decided it would be best to cut costs as fans of the series appear to be buying the title regardless of whether the game is produced physically or digitally. While these two reasons are sound enough to be able to explain the lack of a physical version, I do want to touch on something else that I personally think could potentially be a factor too, no matter how small it may seem. Recently here in Australia, I have actually been the victim of missing out syndrome, with some games opting only to release digitally here rather than physically, and this isn't the most pleasant feeling as a physical video game collector. I have had to import some of these titles from the UK or even the US in order to not only make my collection look more impressive, but also to be able to not have to use an exorbitant amount of space on whichever storage unit my console has. This physical exclusion sometimes isn't just the case for my fellow Upside Down landers, but also it can affect the entire PAL region, which is the largest region in the gaming world. Atlus in the past have given us the cold shoulder by only releasing the critically acclaimed Shin Megami Tensei 4 to us on the Nintendo eShop, which has upset and disappointed us living in the region. Atlus at the moment may be trying their best to avoid that scenario again, as with the release of Shin Megami Tensei 5 have been trying to push for a more global approach when it comes to launching titles. If they were to perhaps release a physical version of the ports of Persona 3 and Persona 4, it might not be feasible at the moment to physically release it in every country due to recent financial circumstances involving recent titles. Now, this part is the biggest stretch in terms of my educated guesses, but I still felt as though it would be relevant to bring up, as it does have the potential to play a huge role as to why there is no physical release of these titles. But it's not like Atlus needs to worry about it, right? We all are aware that Persona is their most popular IP, with Persona 3 and 4 both possessing a huge fan base behind them, which would void the thought that them not being released physically is due to financial problems. But that's just it. They might be struggling a little bit now due to past results, and maybe they just need a title that makes them enough money in order to keep on funding the projects that are yet to come. After all, Atlus is a business at the end of the day, and they need to figure out how to keep themselves afloat. Not only so they can continue to create the games that we all know and love, but also so their employees can continue to create without fear of not being able to sustain themselves in the current world. That wraps up today's discussion about the lack of a physical version for the recently released Persona 3 and 4 ports for all modern systems. While it is apparent there is most likely a production cost involved in the current decision, I do think they may sometime in the future release it physically. What do you guys all think about this? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And don't forget to help support my content as well as the channel by clicking the like button in conjunction with that subscribe button for future updates about Mega 10 content. All of your support means the absolute world to me, and I am extremely grateful for every single one of you who do decide to support my endeavors. With that all being said and done, my name is Resident Unleashed, the resident who wanted to discuss the issues surrounding this and unleash it out into the world, and I'll catch you all next time.